Okay. So I think we can all start now. So thank you everyone for joining this call. Our today's call main aim is on Waterford's toolbox. We'll have 4 presenters, and this call will take approximately 1 minute. It's suggested area. We'll start with the announcements, then we'll go to toolbox introduction for 10 minutes. Then we'll have online training presented by myself, Florence, for another 7 minutes. Then physical training for 10 minutes. Then we'll have Segoa and Anthony Karaoke share their experience on the face-to-face training, each taking 5 minutes. Then we'll take questions after that for 15 minutes. So if you have questions, you can type them on the chat. Then after that, we can answer your questions after the presenters are done presenting. This is to avoid time wastage, and we maximize on every minute we have. So now I'll go direct to the announcement. One is on online courses. They were unavailable from 5th August to 19th of August. This was due to migration from the old system to a new system. So from 20th of August, everybody will be able to access the online courses once again. Then another one is on congratulating our newest certificate holders. We have 2 from Eldoret, that is Grady Koskei and Benjamin Kanyuri. Congratulations to you too. And for everyone else who is taking the online courses, kindly share your certificates so that we can celebrate and also congratulate you during the next webinar. So I have no other than we'll go direct to Fred, who have another announcement. So Fred, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Luis and David, for helping me know my headphones weren't working. So again, good morning everybody who is on the call, and 2 quick announcements. If I have not met anybody on this call, my name is Fred Kihana. I work for the Nature Conservancy. I'm the Africa Waterfalls Director. I'm based in Nairobi. So I requested for a minute to make 2 announcements. One quick announcement is actually on Eldoret. So I may not repeat congratulating the pair who got their certificates, but to appreciate the fact that there's a lot of momentum in Eldoret. To all on this team, Eldoret Waterford, which is 350 kilometers west of Nairobi, just completed their feasibility study. The stakeholders did approve the recommendations of the feasibility study in terms of what needs to be done. And they have Eldoret Water and Sanitation Company, ERDOWAS, one of the managers is the interim chairman as they go on to design an establishment of their own waterfront. So I would like to say Eldoret Waterford is probably our newest kid on the block, and they're doing fantastic. And I think them learning is a great thing, and I look forward to seeing many more on this call in future. To go with the Eldoret, my second announcement is actually on Mombasa. In Mombasa Waterford, which is a coastal city in Kenya, 455 kilometers southeast of the city of Nairobi, again has finalized the ability this year of there by of this network. I don't know whether he's there or not. But just want to let you know that from September, they'll start the process of designing the waterfront. So again, you'll be hearing from Eldoret and from Mombasa as they reach out to many people on this call regarding maybe help or pupillage or support in establishing a waterfront. Across the border in Tanzania, the city of Tanga starts developing, finalizing their feasibility this month. Again, that is good progress, and we wish Tanga well, and we believe that by the time of the year, they will have a feasibility and a decision taken. on which way forward for Tanga Waterford in Tanzania for Tanga City. Florence, I'll stop there. If Mr. Okoth Simon comes online from Freetown, we would like to check with him on how Freetown Waterford is progressing in terms of development. But I'll pause there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fred, for this important announcement. Then, with wasting no time, let's continue to the presenters of today. We'll start with David. David, I share the screen from my side.
I can try from here. Florence.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Is that working?
Yes.
The plow. Okay, great. So good morning, some people. Good afternoon, others. It's nice to join you on another webinar. Thank you, Florence and Fred, for the opportunity. I'm going to talk about building capacity and knowledge sharing today, of which the toolbox is an important part. We're going to break it up so you don't have to listen to me the entire time. So Florence will talk about the online training, as she said, and then we'll hear from some participants of recent in-person training later on their reflections on that, the toolbox, etc. So officially, if you like, this is the title of the presentation. There's my name there, not always easy to spell. And I was looking up tips for good webinars this week, and I was told you have to put a photo of yourself. So there's me and some of my background. I live here in South Africa, but I'm actually originally from the UK. Importantly, I'm fairly new to TNC. I joined in February, and I work for the global team, taking care of the capacity building and, if you like, home for the toolbox, etc. My wife insisted that I put this slide in. And as you'll see, the nature of this presentation, I'm going to try and keep it moving swiftly and hopefully inject a bit of life into what can otherwise be sometimes a boring topic, training. This is a slide I inherited. So knowledge barriers have been limiting the adoption of the water funds model. And if you like, this is the rationale for having my job in the first place. And TNC are keen to increase the pace of spread of water funds while keeping up the quality. So for us, the toolbox and the online training are very important in two aspects. One, they're very scalable, much more so than doing in-person training. And secondly, by getting certification, we can ensure that people who want to put in place water funds have both got access to the necessary knowledge, but have gone through the process. Another way of thinking about this is how do you take old dogs like myself and some younger dogs out there, and in some cases, teach them new tricks. So if you like this, you'll have to turn sideways for that one. But this is a very common diagram in the worlds of digital and online. And the blue is about getting people, aware about water funds, interested in them, considering doing one. And if you like, that's a big part of what this network does. And then we move into a smaller group of people who are interested in learning, and then secondly, being trained. And that's where the toolbox, the online training, and the in-person events come in. So that part's basically taken care of mostly by other people, particularly people like Fred running around the continent, but also communication colleagues. And then this is what I will talk about today. So here's another slide I discovered online. It's a famous English metaphor, which is that you can take a horse to water, but you can't necessarily make them drink. So if you like, all of that blue can get you to learning about water funds, but then comes the important part. Can you actually get people to learn, and what are they learning? More classically put, you have people interested in a water fund who are concerned and thinking about what is the process I must follow. Are there any examples out there? The best practices that I can learn from? And how can I get actual advice from experts? Another way of looking at this, and because training is not always very appetizing, my daughter's recently become a vegetarian, so we're very much into looking at things like lentils. And lentils can, you know, some people prefer them one way, some another way. They can be a bit dry, so we're trying to make them interesting. And if you like, what we're trying to do here is trying to make training on water funds interesting and complementary. So there's 3 different ways that we do this. The first way is to put a lot of the resources in this thing called the toolbox, which I'll explain just now. The second way is to do training, whether that's like in this photo here, in person, or as Florence will discuss, using the online platform. And then lastly, joining things and being part of a network, whether that's the Africa Water Funds Network, the Global Water Funds Network, or others. But to come into, this is the toolbox. This is the in-person training, as I said, and then that's the online training, which complements it, and then finally, the network. So these are the 3 elements that make up what we're talking about here as part of capacity building and knowledge sharing. Getting to the toolbox, which hopefully you'll remember the website, waterfundstoolbox.org. The .org is perhaps the tricky part. One of my jobs is to see who's out there, who's using it, and get some feedback from them. And as you see, the toolbox is being, you know, accessed by people from all over the world. If you just look at the countries listed on the left there, in the orange, it's Mexico, it's New Zealand, it's here in South Africa, it's there in Kenya, it's also in Malaysia. So in essence, this is very important for us because we see water funds as a model, not just for developing countries, not just for Latin America or for Africa, but also all over the world. But it also means that we need to cater to all these people when we do our training and our knowledge sharing.
Right.
Hello? Hope if you can't hear, then somebody interrupt, please. This is the screenshot of the toolbox, and you know there's a lot going on this page. This is just the front page of the box, and inside here there's a lot more that's happening. If you ask me, it's a little bit. There's this this slide here, which is, some of you might know this. Where's Wally? And you have to glance at all these things and try and figure out what's going on. So let me break down the toolbox for you. The first and most important bit is, this is my boss. So she's one of many who comes through and speaks in videos, and I'm sure I need to compliment her jacket here. The next thing is, you've got this menu down the left, which itself is split into different sections, and I'll go through these later. Then further on, you've got, as I say, a video amongst many others you can watch. You can also put the toolbox in roughly 5 languages, which uses Google to do the automatic translations. It's not always perfect, but it's getting better and better, and it does allow that much broader reach to all those countries. The online training, on the other hand, has been specifically translated into French and Spanish. And then you can also search. So as I say, there's a lot going on here, so let me just break it down for you. The other thing is that all the time, this toolbox is being updated with new content, new videos, etc. So there's also the latest news. The people who put this in place at TNC before me were very keen that this is a living website. This is not just a static thing that ages. So new case studies, new business cases, new modules always being uploaded. So back to the main page. And again, there's a lot going on here. So what I like to think of it is that, for me, there's 3 favorite ways into this toolbox. 1, this is the first way that, for me, and again, this is a personal preference, makes it simple. If you go in on the left through methods, then you see lots of things broken down by category, whether that's governance and legal models, whether that's fundraising strategies. And if you click in there, you'll see across the different phases of a water fund how those aspects are expressed. The second way that you can slice into this toolbox is by going into the library, and then, as we see, I've typed in Nairobi at the top there, and then searching Nairobi, part of the design of a water fund, because there are 5 phases and cycles to developing a water fund. These are the aspects that we can see relevant to Nairobi: the business case, the launch event, etc. And you could find a lot of detail of specific cases in there, and lots of other things by going through the library. And then the third way that you can slice this, which I find helpful, is actually just using the search down on the bottom right. And there you put in a key term, whether that might be legal or governance or Cape Town, many different options, science, monitoring and evaluation, and then it will pull up the range of materials there. So there's a lot going in on the toolbox. As I say, you can get it in multiple languages, but for me, there's 3 specific ways in: through the search, through the library, or through the methods, where you can quickly find what you need. So that's the toolbox, and now I'll hand over to Florence to talk about the online training.
Thank you, David, for that very insightful presentation. Waterford's toolbox is my favorite item since it has everything that everyone requires. So not repeating that, I'll go direct to online trainings. So David, if you can go to next. So in Africa, generally we have all the Waterford's demand that is growing at a very high rate. From the map, you can see all those dotted, whether in green, blue, or all those other colors, are the Waterfords that are either under screening, scoping, under development, and 2 that is in Nairobi and Cape Town, which are already developed. With all these sites being interested in Waterfords, then the need for the building capacity for pupils from this city is very crucial and very important. Therefore, if you can go to next. Therefore, it's very important that we build this capacity for all those people in every area. Therefore, as David will talk about later on the face-to-face training, I'll just cover the online trainings. So why is it important that we build the capacity, and how do we do it? In the online trainings, we do it through a self-paced training, which is totally free to everyone, and it has all the requirements, all the crucial parts in the from the design feasibility to design phase. Therefore, if you wonder how a city can be what we define as water security issues, if a city qualifies to have a Waterford, is it feasible? All that can be found in the feasibility and the design phase. Next. When you go through the toolbox, which David has introduced us to previously, then you'll go to trainings, and when you click trainings, it will take you to another different page, which is the conservation training. And directly, it will show you the Waterfords training specifically. In this specific, there are other courses, of course, but our main interest now is the Waterfords training. But if you're interested in the other trainings as well, in terms of which includes maybe climate change, conservation measures, biodiversity, and all that, then you can also access it to do the conservation training. But I'll go directly to the Waterfords training. So this is what will appear first when you click that button, and it will prompt you on the top. You can see the home, about us, full curriculum, sign up, and help. So if you are new, you have never taken any course from the conservation training website, then you'll just directly go to sign up, which will prompt you to create an account, which has a username and the password. Next. Therefore, if most people get problems when they sign up and you forget which username you used or the email you used, if I can go back a little bit, when you do create an account, you receive an email from the conservation training telling you to confirm the details. And if you do so, then you enroll for that course. So if you already created an account, then you just need to log in so that you can put your username and password. But if you forget the existing username or password, there's no need to worry, as you can you can get your password once again, or you can recreate another password or another username by clicking forget your username or password. Then it will ask you for your email. Then a Plum2 email will be sent to, an email will be sent to your the email address you have indicated. Then you'll have a link to where you can set up a new password or a new username. So there's no need to worry if you forget your username or password. You can just recreate it, because if you create another account as a new user, it will, if you had already taken the course halfway, it will start once again. So it's important that the account that you use, you continue with it instead of creating another one, as it will start as a new student instead of an old student. So you can go to next. Therefore, if you log in and you're successful to log in into your details, what do you expect to get inside that that Waterford's training course? This training course is created by most of our experts in the Nature Conservancy. If I didn't mention earlier, we have more than 36 waterfalls around the world. So these videos and these module, or the course outline, was created by experts who have already succeeded in establishing waterfalls, and they are already running an app to place. Therefore, you'll see several videos from expertise from Africa, like Fred Kihara, and you'll also see others from all over the globe, which are very important because they share on different water issues in different areas. So you can get a feel of every area and what are the water security issues and what are the models, the Waterford model interventions that are working for that specific area for Africa and also for different parts of the world. Next. So when you start your feasibility phase, introduction to waterfalls and feasibility phase, there is a very clear format on how those courses are arranged, because every course starts with the purpose, what are the key ideas. You also find the key questions and the answers to that, and you also find the examples from other waterfalls that are already established. And under that, you'll also find different resources which you can use, like case studies. You can find interventions that have been used before. So these are all in the same structure. So every step have that same structure. So it's very hard to get lost inside it, and it's very easy to follow, as it has the same structure from the start to the end, all the way from the design, from the feasibility to design to the creation. So in every section, you'll also find videos for that purposes, and you also find key activities. So in those activities, you'll find various examples of if it's about water security issues. You'll find an example from every part of the world. So it's easy for you to follow what are those key issues that are been that are all over the world, that makes it important to have a waterfall, or what are the issues that the waterfalls aims to solve in different parts. So so if we go to the Waterfalls for Africa resources, I think you'll go to the next, yes. So in that training course, you will find there are various handouts that you can even print, download. Either they are in case studies, either they are Waterfalls guide. So you will find other resources that are very downloadable, and that will help you to do it even after you have logged out or you're offline. There are other materials for your perusal. So who are these people that can access these resources? Generally, it's almost everyone who have an interest in water funds. This composes of all of us, either you are in in NGOs, either you are in the government, either you are a citizen who is interested in water security issues and solving them. So everybody who has an interest on water floods and water security issues can be able to access these resources, and you are able to take the course, whether you are from whichever sector, but the resources are for everyone. So don't worry, everybody can do the course. The next. So these are some of the important links to those. I usually send out these ones when I'm sending either a recording. So most of you have received these. So you don't need to go through the Water Floods Toolbox. If you want to access the feasibility study, you can use this link directly, and I'll send it once again. Or the design phase if you have already completed the feasibility phase. But I usually encourage people to go through the Water Flood Toolbox, as it will be more beneficial because you'll have more resources at your disposal to use. And also on the network, we don't have a limitation to those people who can join these webinars or these calls, as long as you have an interest in WaterFed and you have a water security issue in your area, either in country, and you are interested on how you can solve it, or it can be solved through WaterFed. We encourage those people to join the webinars and be a part of the network. So that's the only way we can be able to learn more from these resources. So the network is basically, if you have a colleague who is interested, you can generally just give them the link and they'll be able to join. So the network goals are the ones that are listed on your screen. One is it's a platform for people to share their knowledge and experience that we have. We have a range of various experts at our disposal, so it's good to make use of them. Then we can jointly find solutions to different challenges that we are facing in our countries, as every country has a specific problem. Then we are able to increase collaboration among our members and also all our stakeholders. And also we are able to have representation in the global network matters. So also I'll be including a link to the global network so that everyone who is interested in the global network webinars and business can be able to join. So you can be in the two networks. There is no limitation to that. So that's the end of my presentation. And in case you have any questions, remember to type them in the chat, as they will be answered later. Now we'll go next to David, who will also take us through the physical training in the next 10 minutes. David?
Yeah, thank you very much, Florence, and sorry for messing with your slides. Clearly,
It's okay.
I need some capacity building myself on that front. Anyway, back to old dogs and new tricks. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the in-person events now, and then we're going to hear from a couple of TNC staff members, Sugoa from Botswana and Anthony from Kenya, who've been through all of this and who are going to reflect on their experiences. So at the outset, I talked about this, you know, following this funnel from learning about the existence of water funds as a concept, to considering it in your context, to learning what it really does entail, what are the different steps, to considering yourself trained. And Florence talked about the ways you do that and getting the certificate, etc. So that I'm now going to talk about the in-person aspect of getting trained, which I like to think of as when you're trained, you know, you're able to do things like this. Now, obviously, that looks slightly different from a water perspective, but what does it mean to come to an in-person training? Well, here's an advert for a training session that we recently completed in Mexico, where we did 2 different types of training. One for people who were already involved in water funds, the directors of water funds, etc., largely from Latin America, but not solely. We also had board members from the Nairobi Water Fund, the Upper Tana Nairobi Water Fund there. And that was looking at how to sustain yourself over a 30-year period, etc. Before that, we had this short course on design, which was a one-day quick dive into the design phase of water funds, bringing together about 25 people, 3 different languages, to look at, okay, how does this work? And this is the sort of event that we put on quite regularly. So this is some of the events that have taken place. The ones that are in white arrows, these have already happened, whether that was Mexico that I just described, whether it was Cape Town back at the end of last year, where you saw some photos earlier, a training we did in Botswana for basin organizations in May, and then the blue arrows are the upcoming trainings, some of which you'll be very welcome to attend. Nairobi 2020 is around the corner. Next year in April, we'll be doing trainings around that. But before that, we'll do some trainings in West Africa, in Senegal, probably in November, in Sri Lanka in December, and then in Montana in the USA next March. Probably some other events to come as well. Now, this is a photo taken during that design short course in Mexico. And in essence, I put this here to really give an essence that the training is not just to sit and listen to an expert give you a PowerPoint and let you absorb lessons and then move on to the next PowerPoint or ask a few questions. It's really trying to promote and provoke discussion between people who are trying to put in place water funds, who are dealing with the same issues. In this case, we have 2 different water funds dealing with the design phase in Latin America, talking to a legal expert on the right from TNC about some of the governance issues that they might face. And if you like, this is a quick insight into the agenda that we see internally. Why do I show you this? Because I want you to focus on this side. This is us making sure, in a very color-coded way, that you don't get bored. If you saw a lot of orange there, PowerPoint, 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 bit of yellow, question and answer, you would know you were in one of those training sessions, and I'm sure you've all been in one, where you sit, there's an expert at the front of the room, you listen, maybe you ask a few questions, you move on to the next PowerPoint. And this is something particularly from that we're trying to not have replicated in in-person trainings. So if we look at what that means, is a bit less of this, 115 slides, back to back, 7 sessions, and a bit more of this. Well, not quite this, more this. Interaction between participants, debate, in this case, a game to have insights together on what it is to collaborate. So that doesn't mean we're getting rid of the formal structure in the PowerPoint. It's there, as you saw earlier, but it's interspersed with other things. To, if you like, the same way there's 3 ways into a toolbox, there's different ways to learn, and that's the sort of thing we're trying to bring through into the in-person training. So that's the ambition, but let's hear from some people who've done it. I don't know who's going first, whether it's Sagoa or Anthony, but I'm sure they know. So if they could get ready now, let's hear from them.
We'll start with Sagoa.
Oh, thanks, Florence. Thanks, David. Well said. And thank you for having me. Just a quick reflections from, one in your slides, Florence, you had a 1 dot in Botswana, and then you called Okavango Basin. We should actually change that to make sure to reflect that it's a transboundary initiative. Just a quick comment. But just from having been part of the 2 sessions, capacity building training sessions, the Nairobi Water Fund, as well as the Cape Town, where, maybe I start first in terms of bringing the context. The Okavango River Basin is a transboundary system shared by the countries of Angola, Namibia, and Botswana. It starts in the Angolan highlands and drains into the Okavango Delta in Botswana. That's where the dot you had, in the map, Florence, where it's in Botswana in the Okavango Delta. But it starts in the upstream, which is in Angola, where 95% of the water comes from. So the countries have been thinking of, establishing some kind of a fund. They first started with a payment for ecosystem services. Then that idea was becoming too complex. And then, TNC came on board, and then that's why the opportunity to expose the countries to training that took place in Nairobi in November 2017. And then there was another one in Cape Town last year, where also additional members from the 3 countries were exposed to such water funds training. Of course, it focused, or it exposed them to all sort of the full cycle of water funds, scoping, feasibility, design, creating, as well as implementation. So the whole idea was to, first, bring, OCACOM, as they were trying to conceptualize some kind of a fund, to a fund that is already operational. I hope everyone can hear me. In
Yes,
this
we can
case,
hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
in this case, the Upper Tana Nairobi Water Fund. So there was a formal, well-structured training that took place. And then I think what was key for lessons learned from that was the exposure to the type of activities that the water fund can fund, and what impact, if we invest in these activities, what will you get? And then get actual sort of evidence-based information from a utility like the company that provides water to the city of Nairobi. So moving from theory, which was like however number of days we were in the class in Nairobi, in Nyeri, to actual exposure to implementation and the results and the impact of a water fund. I think that was sort of eye-opening for OCACOM and especially the member states. I think quick lessons, if I may, was at least what they exposed the member states in terms of the importance of a water fund as a tool that can address similar issues in a transboundary context. The importance of how you structure it such that it provides an opportunity for broad-based stakeholder participation. So it's not just completely like a government-owned process. That was an important lesson. The whole issue around autonomy, in terms of how it's governed, how the finances are managed, how you capitalize the fund. That was a key lesson that sort of some of those lessons have been brought into the fund that has been established aside. I think above all, what has been very critical, lessons learned was this whole issue around having a very clear business case for a water fund. Making sure that there's a justification. Why do you need a water fund? Why do you think a water fund is the best tool to solve those problems? And then what are the threats that you want to address? And is a water fund well suited to address or deal with those threats? And then from there, in terms of, therefore, if a water fund is the best tool, what will be the activities that you want to do? And why do you choose certain activities over certain other activities? This brings me to the whole issue of making sure that there's a clear environment and economic case for doing certain things and allocating resources to finance those activities. What are the return on investment of the various activities, and what activities will be sort of give us a much more higher impact than and therefore the activities that should be funded by a water fund. So, and I think the last lesson, which is more like now coming from this transparent context, is how they could adapt some of those key elements, principles of a water fund in a transboundary context, in which case the fund that has been talked about or being set up here it will be in as a transboundary water fund. So, yeah, so that's, I think, it was quite useful. I think a good exposure for the countries. And I think now, gradually capacity has been built in terms of them really knowing what is this animal that they're creating, and whether, an adaptation of the water fund actually is the best tool for addressing some of the threats faced by the basin. And I think that that's what they are realizing, and there's a lot of momentum towards making sure that now it moves into the next stages of actual operationalization. I think my 5 minutes should be gone by now, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Segoa. Then we'll give Anthony a chance so that he can give his key learnings from the Mexico training. Anthony?
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Florence, for having me. I hope you can hear me. Unfortunately, I cannot be on video. I'm
Yes.
on some low bandwidth.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Great. My 5 minutes, I'll try to just share back with the team the learnings from the Mexico. Just for the context, the Latin American countries had a biennial waterfalls congress where they congregate every 2 years, and they share, they learn, and they do things together and continue with the networking. So for this time, it was being hosted in Mexico City in the month of July. And Nairobi Water Fund was privileged to be invited, and I had with me two trustees who accompanied me for the same. So the Congress was 2 days, but I will speak more to the one-day training, that is July 17, that we participated in as part of our visit to the Congress. So just to mention on the participants from Africa, I was happy to have our colleague Jean Manfubi from Gabon. I don't know whether he is on this call, and then Tony Kariuki, the Waterford manager for Nairobi, and my two trustees of Nairobi Water Fund, that is Madam Agnes Yobderik, who is a director in the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, and a trustee for the Water Fund, and she doubles up as the Jeff desk officer for the Jeff in Kenya. And the other trustee was Joshua Irongo, a former governor for one of the counties, and I've been a trustee for Nairobi Water, and currently now the chairman of the Water Services Regulatory Board. So it was a good, strong team from Africa, I would say. But of course, there were quite many others in Latin America countries and the TNC across the region. Importantly also, people from private sector and especially key leaders who had a lot to share, and public sector as well. In terms of that training, it was a 1 day, and the focus was largely on supporting teams to build resilience for water fund financing. So the focus for me, I took away, is in like 2 ways. One was building sustainable finance for water funds. And here we had very good experiences from facilitators and people sharing on how to establish funding strategies that are linked to governance and implementation arrangements, because that's a key aspect of the water funds, and a big opportunity if it's met at the beginning of how to align those to then support the sustainability of the water fund. A second aspect of the focus was on effective fundraising, and this was more so again both from the private as well as the public. And we had some good examples and presentations on fundraising from the multilateral as well as bilateral for public, and the most exciting on corporate engagements for fundraising, and some good best practices shared. Key that came out on this second was the question of risks that companies see or care about, and then how to make sure that water funds and stakeholders are recognizing and speaking to that, and therefore have the same talking or kind of agreed positions with the private sector. So it was really an empowering 1 day, helping the trainees to deepen their understanding on sustainable financing and fundraising for water funds. In terms of lessons, I can share a highlight of 3, 4, and this again, I would like to build on what David and Sego have shared. For me, I had the privilege of being in 2 e-trainings here before, the one Sego has talked of, hosted by Nairobi, and the one in South Africa, and now as a non-facilitator in the Mexico, sitting back and learning and absorbing. So the first one is, of course, in-person sessions have a big advantage of the broader interactions. Both the facilitators, the participants, and more so on materials and content as shared. There is a good space there. And I think that in itself helps clarify many issues that sometimes on an online training, one, especially a new participant, may not be able to have that opportunity to clarify and internalize the results and the learning. So in one, they have a very big advantage for broader interactions and context. A second one for me is the whole thing about dynamics and the rich mix, both of expertise and experiences that are brought together in one room. I can probably relate more to the Mexico training that we had. And even though translations were a challenge, the space provided by being in one physical space brings that advantage of being able to explore more broadly, and I would say beyond the content of the training itself. As you have heard from the rest, it's a process. The waterfall has many aspects, and the different people in a room are at different levels or stages of a waterfall. So there is always something that triggers, oh, so why is that? Or why is that not, the way I see it? So in itself, that dynamism and the rich mix of experiences, expertise in an in-person training really helps to consolidate, to add value to the trainees on that. And the element of like for breakouts, marketplace, the one-on-one informal, those touch-based during breaks and so. So this is basically what I'm speaking to. It has a broader space and provides that in terms of dynamics and richness of experiences shared. For me, number three was the whole question of content. As you all know, it's always very ambitious. And even though in-person training then have a big opportunity of sharing on slides or the facilitators' explanations live, there is always a big challenge. And I think that is in many ways on a diverse group. And therefore, after presentation, the time for interaction is always not enough. And especially when there is what I would call different people at different stages of the waterfall development cycle. And even though you cannot have all in one, I think a key lesson there is how much content for a session, for a day, for a training event. I think that's something, and I like what David is speaking to, that perhaps we would like to make sure that the in-person training are taking full advantage of that, presence in one space, and maybe have more of the group works, and if possible, a very specific case study where a real experience is shared and the participants are able to engage with that process, or a field visits that are very that they really help to consolidate the context, the learnings, and as always, the experiences. Number four for me is also, again, on contact and networks. The in-person space allows to deepen that in a very special way, because the in-person has a great way of enhancing the one-on-one contacts. Most of the time, one may, after, a presentation, have, wow, what did this guy mean about this? And he or she is able to walk over to the facilitator or the person next to him and deepen that conversation. And wow, the concept is probably much more clearer, much more understood, and that person leaves with a much more clarity. And beyond the willingness to learn, he gets to really take something away home. And finally, for me, is the pre-training. I think that is a good gem for this approach for waterfalls and other trainings, because then it helps people even before they go to the in-person session to have a bit of an internalization, a little bit of an awareness, a little bit of, the terms, the kind of language are a bit familiar, and therefore it maximizes the optimization of the time during the in-person sessions. That time is always limited, and I think probably borrowing back from the other two trainings, I think the training exercises that are shared and the participants are encouraged to or forced to make sure that they have gone through that it has a lot of value then for when the in-session then happens, the people come with much more preparedness, and they're able to get the full advantage of the content and experiences shared on that kind of a space. I think those are some of the highlights I would share. And thanks everyone and Florence for putting me on this call, and we'll be happy to reflect on any key questions. I will share the link for that training. I think they have shared the slides and all. Part of it is in Spanish. Thank you. I'm sure you'll enjoy part of it. I'll just share the link on the chat after this. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you so much, Anthony. That was a very insightful.
I'll be down a second.
Sorry?
It should be the conference room because you want project.
Okay, I'll just tell Paul.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, it shouldn't be his office.
Can we be on mute? Okay, so David, do you want to finish up?
Yeah, thank you, I will. And I think you can force everyone on mute.
Yes.
So thank you, Sigurd, Anthony, for those insights from the trainings that you did. I think some valuable points there. Let's move on and get to questions, and maybe we can come back to some of those points if we want. So back to the presentation. I think, I mean, one of the things that obviously a water fund is all about is the collaboration between the different sectors. And to build on what Anthony was saying about the scope at an in-person event for crossing the floor, for speaking to the speaker, for understanding what other sectors went through, this is really something that we're trying to bring forward. But I think it's also important that he said that there's this pre-training, which is the online, before you come to the event, because you're a better collaborator if you're prepared, if you're talking the same language. So I think with that, let's pass to the discussion and the questions with the time that we have left. Over to you, Florence.
Yeah, David, I can see one question, two questions on the chat. It's from John, and the question is, how could the lessons learned from the Nairobi Water Fund, for example, be integrated into the toolbox? Knowledge sharing have been limiting adoption of intervention. How best can knowledge be shared with stakeholders at all levels? Would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, sure. So thank you, John, for the question. I think, as I said, the toolbox intends to be a living resource, but it's also extremely structured. You know, as Florence explained, there's step 1.1, there's step 1.2, there's this. So I think what some of this, when you can codify lessons around a process like collaboration, sometimes there's scope to put them in a document. But what I think the toolbox does allow us to do is add videos, as we saw from the Rio Grande. And some of the things that, that you're alluding to, I think what would be great is if we can get those involved in water funds, and that we were just doing now in Mexico, to record a brief video, getting really into the personal lessons about sharing, then we can have those uploaded. So just for everyone's benefit, we recorded maybe another 60 videos in Mexico in English or Spanish, with really trying to get a bit deeper beyond the recipe, if you like, to the actual experience of the cooks putting it together. And so that might be something that Nairobi could also do. Okay, and I see there's a, Florence, back to you.
Yeah, there's another question to Florence. Are there possibilities of linking training certificates to online platforms? That is, example, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, etc., that can in turn promote the course, stroke the toolbox. Yeah, thank you, John. This is a very useful question. These haven't been done yet, but I think it's a good idea that if someone downloads a certificate, there is a prompt to either post it on Twitter or Facebook. It can do good promotion. I think it's something that David and the rest of the team could possibly raise, and maybe could be added to the trainings. It haven't been done yet, but it's a good idea to consider. So I haven't seen any more questions. Yeah, there's a question from Fred for Anthony. Question for Anthony. We are always been required to give justification for the cost. We incur sponsoring trips like the Mexico one. Is it possible to give some highlights of the positive follow-up actions or donor links made that are likely to offer support to work in Africa that you can share or ask some of the network members to follow up? Anthony, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, thanks, Florence, and thanks, Fred, for that follow-up question. Yeah, for sure. We prepared a report, and we will be able. I would propose that we can share with the network after the call. My two trustees are reviewing it, and we also wanted to make sure that they also have whatever they wanted reflected in the experiences shared. So we can share that to the network a little bit later. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Our time is up. So I would ask everyone, if you have more questions, follow up, you can do them through the email. You can send me an email with the question for a specific person. And if you would like, you would also go to the directly to the presenters. With the recording, I'll put in the email contact so that if you have a direct question, you can just ask them personally, or you can send it to me for me to do a follow-up, and then we'll give you an answer. So apologies for having less time on presentations. Hoping next time we'll have more time for that. So David, if you wanna, do you have anything before we close?
Yeah, just I think to highlight again that there are new in-person trainings coming up. One of these I'm showing on the screen now will be in April 2020, but there will also be one in West Africa, probably in November, that we hope to open to others. So keep an eye out for updates from Florence for that. And then the online training will be up again, hosted on a brand new exciting platform in a week or so. So bear with us. You'll be able to get back into the site, whether that looks like this or is slightly different. You'll have the same username and password, but you'll be able to continue the courses there. So thank you, Florence, and the Africa Water Funds Network for the opportunity. And yeah, I hope to meet some of you at an in-person training soon enough.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I'll be sending the presentations from Mexico and any other follow-up questions when I'll be sending out the recording. And thank you, everyone, for finding time to join this call. I hope you all had a good time and you learned more on the in-person training and face-to-face training. So thank you, and see you all again soon in two months' time. Okay, goodbye, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Florence. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Florence. Bye.